we're here today to celebrate innovation and technology, right? And we really try to rally around our entrepreneurs and help them as much as possible. Is there any advice or any warnings you might give to our entrepreneurs?
Because I care so much about, especially young entrepreneurs in the university, I usually talk to younger ones, and they come out of the business schools. We didn't have entrepreneurship as a curriculum, as a major in the universities back a long time ago, and now we do. And they've come out of a business school, and they know how to write their plans and do some spreadsheets and go make presentations and elevator pitches and get money, and then once you get the money, I'll hire the engineer to build it. And I tell them, no. Engineers have worked their life trying to solve difficult problems, and get the engineers involved in thinking out what you can do, and you'll add so many more features and extra things you hadn't thought of to your whole idea. So make sure the engineers are with you as some really good engineers, and preferably ones that have built stuff on their own. Doesn't have to be worth a cent, just little fun things they built on their own, but builders know how to create well, and get them involved in defining what your business is going to be. And try to have a working model before you seek capital. Before you go to the venture capitalist, try to have a hardware working model or a software, at least a virtual presentation, so somebody can actually operate. This is how it's going to work, and not just see pictures on paper. That's just too dry. And I say that because we started Apple with a working model. We didn't have to go out and design it.
And that's how quick you were to market.
Yeah, but it gave us probably more ownership of the company and better shape to have a company. We wanted our company not to get bought out and consumed. We wanted to have Apple be what it is today, one of those companies that lives forever.
So as an electrical engineer, I strongly agree that engineers should be involved from day one. It's important. So it's a little biased. So we definitely have some time for a few questions from the audience. If folks want to raise their hands. Yep.
Where do you see Apple going in the next 20 years? Do you see it being focused on the next greatest thing, like even a car, or do you see it being a big consumer products conglomerate spreading into lots of different things?
Yeah, Apple's so huge that it's going to be, surviving obviously for the next 20 years, because when you have a lot of money in the bank, 145 billion or whatever, that buys you a lot of failures. You get a lot of, I'm not called failures, but you get a lot of tries to hit, and a lot of tries to hit another big home run. So it's like IBM was really the largest company in the world ever in terms of constant dollars by a 3-to-1 factor, even over Apple. Why? They had the IBM 1401 back in the old punch card days. This is even before I went to college, and they cost 25 million bucks, and they sold 30,000 of them. If you multiply those numbers, you'll see why IBM was so huge. Here is IBM. Sure, it is 50 years later, 40 years later, and IBM's sort of having a lot of trouble right now in the modern era and going down. So you can last, so 20 years is kind of a short term. Where is Apple going exactly? I'm hoping that Apple will be making the finest products that you want to own that are really your connection to the world, artificial intelligence-wise. Your best friend, your advisor, always knowing what you've got planning coming up, kind of like Google now, but like speaking to you. Oh, you're driving past a grocery, you're driving past a cake store and it's so-and-so's birthday. All that little personal advice, and it looks like you're going to be out a few more hours. Should I change the timing on your thermostat? It should just be kind of that smart. It's almost your assistant. It's almost you. And I think that Apple and Google are both well positioned. Google especially as far as the brain. What is the brain? We don't know. We don't know how it's wired. But we used to ask a smart person with a brain a question, and now you ask somebody whose name starts with G-O and it's not God. And so we didn't build the internet to be a brain. It's like we added one technical feature after another, and then a lot of people could get on at once and share information. Then we needed search engines, and that replaced a part of the brain. So it's kind of like we stumble on these little formulas by accident, and Google is headed off. They hired Ray Kurzweil, whose last book was How to Build a Brain. They're obviously very intent on going in that direction of, of artificial intelligence, really. So I wish that company would combine with Apple, for the beautiful hardware understanding of it. But they bought Motorola for hardware instead. That was their mistake.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm studying empathy and leadership in college, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on the importance, like you mentioned earlier, you kind of wish Steve Jobs was a little bit nicer of a personality as a leader. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on what empathy does to leadership.
I don't know exactly what that means. I know empathy is people who think like you, feel things the way you do. I mean, the product, it was the only successful product for the first 10 years of Apple. I just designed it, but it all came out of a club of people that were talking about such ideas of where they might go, and the social revolution had to be preceded by the technical revolution, and that was where I could contribute. That's how I thought, and Steve, yeah, it's sort of strange because, did he care about things like education, helping the poor people in the world, this and that? Well, people who speak that way and really do have those cares generally are giving. They give a lot of their own money to charities and whatnot. Apple would never give any money to charity at all under Steve Jobs. And I think he was just more acute as how to have a big successful company and keep it going. And, rather than looking at the far end goal. If we build good products, they'll get it, was sort of his thinking.
Franz.
Trevor?
I heard a venture capitalist come to Denver and speak to a room full of entrepreneurs, and his comment was, if you're serious about entrepreneurship, you wouldn't be here in Colorado. You would be in Silicon Valley, you'd be in Boston, but you being here tells me you're not serious. He said, if you're an actor, you go to LA or you go to New York. If you're an entrepreneur, you go one of those places if you're serious about it. You can be a great actor in Denver, big whoop. To be a great entrepreneur, you got to be in one of those markets. We're striving real hard to have Colorado be a real entrepreneurial state. Chris Franz leading the charge for sure. We got some great entrepreneurs in this room. What are your thoughts on that?
I oppose that thinking that you heard very much. As a matter of fact, there was goes a long way back. I travel the world these days, and I find entrepreneurs in every little corner of the world. And for quite a while, for the last 20 years, they wanted to think, how can we build another Silicon Valley? Well, now with the sort of things that are changing life, which are apps on pads and smart products and on software on the internet, they're really expanding all over the place. In Silicon Valley, 38% of the people are employed in technology, but you find numbers very close to 38% in places like southern Florida and southern Texas and, of course, Boston area. So there are it's not really restricted to only one place. Yes, all the resources and the formulas and people talking are so high in Silicon Valley. There's a critical level, and you'll see a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurship spring up in that area because that's where all the people that's going to come out of kind of live right now. But absolutely not any difference in the thinking. When I worked at Hewlett-Packard designing chips for our calculators, I looked at the papers that were submitted at the chip conferences, and it turns out that, yes, Intel, the United States companies, the Silicon Valley companies, were making the largest, best chips in the world with the tiniest densities on the chip. But the mathematics, the deep calculus and quantum physics was exactly the same in the papers from the Japanese. They just hadn't gotten to the level of having their production making the biggest chips in the world yet. And it really comes out of the head. The head is the thinking. And all of engineering really comes from the mind. Now, when I worked at Hewlett-Packard spun out divisions to places like Colorado. I would fly up to Fort Collins, Colorado, or I think even Colorado Springs, and go to a Hewlett-Packard division back in those days when we were building our little calculators, before Apple. And I loved it. The people talked about the great environment where they lived, and the whole teams were very independent. Sure, they were under a corporate umbrella that would visit them now and then, but that thinking, independent thinking, I became very a positive force for it. Hewlett-Packard spun divisions out to Corvallis, Oregon, up to Santa Rosa, California, Northern California. And so when we started talking about having a campus for Apple, I was the one executive who was against it. I felt that it'd be better to spin out divisions, but I lost out because those at the top always want centralized control and closeness to everything. So we're in a campus environment now. But no, the benefits of the environment have always remained so strong in me, and Colorado #1. So. Yeah, so I'm sorry to hear that thinking. I've heard it a lot over time, but there are a lot of venture capitalists now that don't talk that way. In the early days of venture capitalism, when we started having all these entrepreneurships like Apple springing up, and the whole venture capital organization evolved in Silicon Valley, the companies were starting up all over the country. But then the venture capitalists got so tired of flying to a board meeting, and every week they had to fly to another city to a board meeting. They got tired. They said, no, we're only going to start you up if you're right here in Silicon Valley so we can go to all the board meetings where we live. That was really the main impetus for it.
Come back soon.